All right, part 2 of chapter 4. That evening, as Talmage lay in bed, he thought about what his father had said and how sad his father had looked. Talmage made a silent vow to the monster and to his father. His dad had given up, but he hadn't. He was going to catch that fish once and for all, and he spent the entire night thinking about how he was going to do it. On Monday, Talmage pretended to sleep while he waited for his dad to go to work. As soon as Talmage heard the front door shut, he jumped out of bed, a notebook in his hand. He got dressed and grabbed everything he needed from the shed where they kept the fishing supplies. He loaded the motorboat and headed out. When he arrived at the mouth of the river, he opened his notebook and looked over a matrix he had drawn. 3 columns were labeled: bait, location, weather. Each row represented a time of the day. He knew Dad had always tried to catch the monster by looking for conditions that were similar to the day his father had hooked the fish. But after 20 years, Talmage figured it was time to try something new. What if the fish didn't like Dad's lure or preferred a different spot? Talmage figured if he noted the weather and methodically changed the variables that he could control, like the bait and the location, he could eventually discover the right combo and nab the fish. Talmage filled in the first row in the matrix: chartreuse crankbait, mouth of river, warm and sunny. For company, Talmage switched on the radio. He adjusted his baseball cap and cast his line. If anyone was going to catch the monster, it would be him, now that he had the system. Talmage smiled. That month of June, Talmage tried different lures at all times of the day at the mouth of Wallamoo River. He grabbed every chance he could to fish, usually when his father was at work, fast asleep, or out on a ride on his motorcycle, something his dad did a lot since he gave up on the monster. By the end of the month, Talmage's notebook was 1/3 full of entries, Mrs. Karagosian. So he had filled it 1/3 of the way full of different bait he used, different places he fished, and what the weather was like. And he's working out all these different ways. Mrs. Karagosian loves it. Not only did he not give up, he applied our word. Right now, Mrs. Karagosian hopes you're all thinking of yet. He hadn't caught the monster yet. But he's not just going out blindly hoping for luck either. He's working out a good scientific kind of system to figure out, did this bait work? What's a different place he could fish? He's checking out all different ways. Makes Mrs. Karagosian very proud of him. But still no monster. Nevertheless, Talmage's determination did not change. He still had dozens of locations to try. Talmage began fishing at Quarry's Cove, Gilman's Point, Wheaton's Dock. He swapped out the lures and fished in all sorts of weather: rain, wind, and scorching heat. Still no monster. By the end of summer, the notebook looked beat up. It was full, and Talmage was beginning to wonder if he meant to catch the fish after all. On the last weekend before school began, Talmage sat on his bed and mulled over his entries in his notebook. Was there any combination he hadn't tried? His father knocked, and then the door opened. Talmage, have you seen my fishing pole? Talmage quickly closed his notebook. Dad's pole. He had been so eager to get to bed last night, he hadn't put it away. It was in the boat. No. Oh, Talmage, don't lie. Team Karagosian, don't fib. Parents are there to help. He needs to just tell his dad the truth. His father scratched his head. I know I stored it in the shed ages ago, but it's not there. I wanted to sell it. Sell it? Yeah. A flicker of sadness crossed his dad's face. No sense in keeping it. Someone must have taken it, he sighed. It's just as well. After Dad left, Talmage stared at his notebook. He didn't know how much longer he could stand seeing his father miserable over the monster. He opened the notebook and studied the last few pages again. He had to find a way. As he scanned the entries, a new possibility came to him. Talmage's heart sped up a little as he thought it over. There was one more combination he hadn't tried. That evening, when his father was asleep, Talmage went out on the boat, more determined than ever. He motored out to the mouth of the river and threw on Dad's old lure. He never thought to use Dad's lure to go to the same old spot. What if it wasn't the bait or the location, but the fisherman? Dad had said the fish had looked scared of him, but the monster didn't know Talmage. It was worth a try. Talmage flipped on the radio and cast his line. He waited patiently, knowing this was his last hope. Over and over again, he cast his line and reeled it in. Hours went by with the stars twinkling above, and eventually Talmage couldn't ignore the sinking feeling growing in his stomach. He began to hate fishing, the monster, and his vow to catch the fish. A Beatles song came on the radio, and instantly Talmage came back to the day that he and his dad had caught a monster all right, a monster of a tire. Funny how a song can bring you right back to a moment, Talmage thought. Paolo's laughter, Dad chucking the hat. He'd never forget that day. It had started out great, and then it quickly became one of the worst days of his life. Just like the day his father had hooked the monster. What a curse. Talmage straightened. Wait a minute. Just like the day his father had hooked the monster? He reeled in the line and turned on the motor. He had to get back to the house, quick. He burst through the door of his father's bedroom. Wake up, Dad. We have an appointment with the monster. His dad sat up in bed and squinted at Talmage. What are you talking about? Talmage tugged at his father. We have to try one more thing. Talmage, what on earth? But Talmage wouldn't let his father stay in bed. He wouldn't let him give up. He made him get dressed and dragged him outside. Today's the day. I just know it, Dad. The sky was still dark, but soon it would become dawn. Hurry up, Dad. It's almost 6. As Talmage started the boat, he made his father look at the notebook. Talmage filled him in on the way to the mouth of the Wallamoo River. See, Dad? All summer, I've been trying every possible thing to catch the monster. But we know the monster isn't some ordinary fish. Yet we've been acting as though he thinks and behaves like one. That doesn't make sense. His father listened as they went to the spot where they usually fished. He's not any old fish attracted by regular old lures. Talmage cut off the motor and pointed at the radio. What was the song, Dad? What was Grandpa's favorite song? Sing it. Talmage's dad stared at Talmage in disbelief. What? Sing the song, Talmage tried to remember the words. Something about moon and sun. Talmage's father stared at his son. Oh, what do we have to lose? He looked at the deep, murky water. The moonlight shone over its surface. He began to sing. When the hours are in and the day is done, it's quitting time. But when it comes to getting what you want, from the moon to the sun, Talmage joined in. You never give up, you never give in. The lake grew eerily quiet. For a moment, it seemed like the lake was listening. Again, Talmage whispered. When the hours are in, they sang. The boat suddenly began to shift. Small waves foamed in the water. Talmage, his dad said. Talmage kept singing. Get the pole, Dad. We don't need the pole, his dad said. I think he's coming right to us. Talmage stared at the growing ripples in the water. His father was right. Keep singing, Talmage whispered. Neither of them dared to move. From the moon to the sun, the ripples grew even larger. The monster was coming. You never give up. Something began to rise above the surface, just as rays of sunlight hit the water. Talmage could feel the boat rise from the force of the waves, and what emerged was something bigger than anything Talmage could have imagined. He swallowed. You never give in. And then he saw it. The monster's brilliant emerald green head, the dark orb of his eye. The eye was so big, Talmash could see himself and his dad in its glassy reflection. Talmash could barely breathe, but he wasn't scared. Neither was the monster. "There you are," Talmash's father whispered. "Do you see the monster?" Then, as quickly as the fish had come, it slipped into the water with a splash that echoed across the lake. The boat rocked from its wake. Talmage and his father stood in silence as the lake grew still again. Then Talmage realized something dreadful. "Dad, we didn't catch him." His father put his arm around Talmage's shoulder. "It's okay." Talmage stared at the spot where the monster had been. "Who's going to believe us?" "It doesn't matter," Dad said. "I got what I wanted." Talmage's face wrinkled. "No, you didn't." His father looked at him. "Talmage, all I wanted was to show you." No, Miss Karagosian, you can't mess that line up. His father looked at him. "Talmage, all I wanted to show you was that if you don't give up, anything is possible." "What?" "You just did that for me instead." He gave Talmage's father a squeeze. With those words, Talmage gazed at the lake again. His father was right. It was one of the best days of his life, and the deep, murky water of Wallamaloo Lake was as clear as it could ever be. So, he didn't want to catch the fish. He wants to let the monster live for a legacy, to just be there in the lake forevermore. But what he wanted to teach his son was, don't give up on a dream. It was the dad's dream to catch the monster, and he wanted to teach Talmage that you work hard for your dreams. And at the end of the story, the dad realized that his son already knew that, because his son spent all summer trying to achieve the dream. Luke just came in with some laundry. Say hi, Luke.
Hi, Luke.
All right, Team Karagosian, Chapter 5 tomorrow. Break a leg. Love you guys. Miss you. Take care.